let's get into the wide receiver position and what we got wrong. Like I said, we have a ton of clips here today. This first one is about a player who was a little bit newsy today on social media, so that's a good timing here. Let's talk. This is actually 3 players here in the first one. These are all, I believe they're all potentially me here. We'll see, but these are all 3 rookie wide receivers. So let's take a listen to what we had to say. Jaguars wide receiver / cornerback Travis Hunter played 11 out of 12 snaps with the first team offense in preseason and 0 with the first team defense. He did mix in on some defensive snaps after that. I think this is just confirmation of what we should know at this point, that the Jaguars view Travis Hunter as an offensive first player. He is rotating in the slot. He doesn't really see the field in 2 receiver sets because they have De'Ami Brown there to do that stuff. I don't really think that's going to matter very much. This is mostly an 11 personnel offense. And the reality is when Travis Hunter's on the field, he's going to be getting the football. So I want to get a little higher on Travis Hunter in my rankings. You guys know just how special of a receiver prospect I thought this guy was. I want to get Travis Hunter on some teams. I want to be aggressive on this player. I've been aggressive on him since the moment I charted his first 3 games for reception perception. They might have thought back in April when Emeka Egbuka was drafted to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like, all right, I might get like a Jackson Smith-Njigba, Rome Odunze rookie season where he's stuck behind some other veteran receivers and maybe it's next year. Well, now I don't think you're going to have to be patient for this guy. I think he's going to just hit the ground running immediately. I mentioned Jalen McMillan earlier. He is now placed on IR. We know Chris Godwin has not even started jogging on a separate field yet. Man, it really went pretty quick from why did they draft that guy to thank God we drafted that guy. They're going to need him to hit the ground running. Yeah, I'm going, and this is a guy I definitely want you to draft. He's one of my favorite picks in round 10 right now. I just wrote a favorite picks piece for the website. My round 10 selection was Matthew Golden of the Green Bay Packers. 113th overall ADP on Matthew Golden right now. What if Matthew Golden just emerges as the top guy here? And right now, I love Jaden Reed, but Jaden Reed's in a walking boot. Like right now, I do think Matthew Golden does project as the number 1 wide receiver of this team. Okay, so I think that just like the last one was the one that I got a red face on a little bit here about the Matthew Golden thing. Now, in my defense, Boone, it was a round 10 pick. The deal with round 10 picks is they might not work out, but favorite pick in round 10, Matthew Golden, 29 receptions in his rookie season, didn't score his first touchdown until this past week in the playoffs, so it did not help your fantasy teams. We'll unpack all 3 of those, but I think we can definitely say that Matthew Golden, that was bad. That was a whiff, and you take your shots in ambiguous wide receiver rooms. Some of them are going to miss. That was a big miss in Matthew Golden here.
Yeah, and shout out to the producers here because there's definitely clips of me talking up Travis Hunter. There's definitely clips of me talking up Emeka Egbuka. They didn't use those. They just threw you under the bus on this one. I will say I don't think there's any clips of me talking up Matthew Golden, though. I wasn't really in on him, for a variety of reasons, that they had so many pieces there that, we know they spread the ball around. Didn't really love him as a prospect either, and yeah, that one just came to be, right? 25 yards or less in almost 60% of his games. Like you said, no touchdowns, as people watching can see on the screen there. He only cracked 10 fantasy points once during the regular season. And even if like Romeo Doubs leaves in free agency, because Doubs is a free agent here, you still have Christian Watson, who this year kind of looked like he was separating himself a bit as potentially like a real number 1 receiver there. Jaden Reed, who despite being hurt before the season there, comes back, kind of gets back to doing some Jaden Reed things. I think he's definitely a better player than Golden as well. And then Dontavian Wicks is still around. And I mean, if he could ever learn how to catch properly and hold on to some of those balls, we know he's a pretty talented guy as well. On top of the fact that Tucker Kraft, who I think we'll talk about later in the show, we hope he'll come back healthy and he's going to be heavily involved. So I don't know that I see a real path towards Golden being like a quality fantasy asset moving forward, unless there's like a bunch of injuries potentially. I don't know if you feel differently, but for that one, I think that certainly was a pretty rough call in hindsight there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And again, it's the thing with him was like, take him in the late rounds. It wasn't like a big flag plant necessarily, but I was a little bit ahead of consensus because I just like taking shots at these ambiguous wide receiver rooms. But I would rather have not had to say like he was my favorite round 10 pick or whatever. And the funny thing, you mentioned, kind of not loving him as a prospect. I was pretty much in the middle with Matthew Golden. I mean, there are some data folks who really look like they've got this one right, that because of his lack of college production, he was not going to be a needle moving NFL player. Look, he's a rookie. So I'm not saying his career is over by any means, but that really decreased the odds that he would be like a highly targeted player because he wasn't that productive in college. And now there were some other film people that were very, very high on Matthew Golden and maybe potentially had him as the wide receiver one in the class. I thought he was like a third tier prospect. So I kind of came down somewhere in the middle there. And in a weird way, it's like I almost hedged against my own talent evaluation with Matthew Golden, taking like a shot on a talented round one player in an ecosystem that obviously can be really good in that Packers offense. So that's something for me to remember going forward. Is like the most important thing is the prospect evaluation, which I actually think transitions us really well into Emeka Egbuka, which it's kind of hard to say. Like, were we right or were we wrong on Egbuka, Boone? Because he ended up being a really great pick in the first half of the season, maybe even like the first 33% of the season, 40% of the season, maybe not a full half of the year, but he ends up finishing as wide receiver 31 in fantasy points per game, which is funny because I look back at my rankings, I actually had him as wide receiver 32, which at the time was still a flag plant based on ADP, and he ends up kind of being exactly that. Not that you want to draft, you don't want to draft a guy and be like, oh, I got his ranking right or whatever. That's not the whole point of the thing. You want him to be a meaningful difference maker, which for the most part, Egbuka, for the vast majority of the season, absolutely was not. And I think coming back to the prospect evaluation for this one, Boone, Egbuka, and we talk about this kind of later towards the season, you put that awesome weeks 1 through 5 stretch aside when it looked like, oh my God, he's on this rocket ship upward. He was a good prospect, a really, really good prospect that I thought was more of a tier 2 guy, as opposed to not like a tier 1 prospect, but a tier 2 prospect who could be a really good long-time number 2 wide receiver. Ultimately, if you kind of forget how he produced in the big like early bucket and then nothing down the stretch, if you just stretch that over the course of his rookie season, he kind of had that type of rookie year from a prospect perspective. So I'm not really sure like how to bucket him in terms of hit, miss, whatever. Just such a bizarre season for him down the stretch.
I mean, I think in terms of 2026, I do think I'm taking the L. Like, I think this is a miss for us. And it seems like we were geniuses in those first 5 weeks because we can go back to the very first show we did and I was highlighting him. We were talking him up. But yeah, for those first 5 weeks to be the wide receiver 3 overall. And then after that, from week 6 on, the wide receiver 57, talked a million times about how it wasn't even like he was boom or bust. There was like one boom in there. Other than that, it was under 45 yards in 7 of his last 8 games. You didn't even want him in your lineup. You probably regretted hanging on to him all season in redraft. Dynasty, a different story. I think for Egbuka, I do have high hopes for him long-term, still having a meaningful role in this offense. I think what he flashed early in the season, we're going to be able to see that at some point in his career in the future. I think he's going to be good. Matthew Golden, not so much. I mean, the history of receivers like Golden who don't really produce in their first year, it's not great. Like, there's some that still come along, but guys like that don't have production in their first year, it's pretty scary. And I think in Dynasty, you're almost better off to like sell someone like that, even if you're taking 50 cents on the dollar. Like, I've started to do that in recent years, where if that guy doesn't hit, if that receiver doesn't hit in year 1 and you don't have reason to like think it's necessarily going to turn around quickly, like you drafted him probably with a 1st round rookie pick in Dynasty last year, I would probably sell him for a 2nd round rookie pick in Dynasty if you can get it right now. Like, I would just get off that train as quick as possible, where Egbuka, you actually might be able to almost buy low because of the way the season went for him. And I do think, he's going to be fine long-term, but there's still a lot of questions, right? Like, when you look at this receiver core next year, Mike Evans going to turn 33. We don't really know what his future is going to be, whether he's going to be with the team or whether he's going to retire. Chris Godwin, you hope that like the further removed he gets from his injuries, maybe he can get back to something a little closer to the Chris Godwin that we know and love for fantasy. Jalen McMillan, we talked about either last week or the week before as somebody who became this like sneaky option in that receiver core and actually started playing more than Egbuka down the stretch, started getting more targets. Like, he's going to factor in as well here. So you would hope that next season we're going to see Egbuka start strong and we're not going to have to worry about this all year long. But right now, like his status, his value is up in the air. And for redraft, I think I mentioned this on the show before, that when I initially did my rankings, my first top 50, and then, from there I've expanded it. Now people can go check that out on Yahoo. I don't have any of the Bucs receivers inside the top 50. I just am pretty scared right now trying to figure out what the value is going to be in that group. So it's kind of just a stay away, and we'll see how this shakes out during the off season, and then we'll go from there. And of course, I'm going to adjust those rankings a bajillion times here before we get to draft season. But right now, I'm kind of just playing a really cautious game with those Bucs receivers.
I think that's fair right now. And, this is going to come up in our next conversation here too. It's like, we don't have to make final decisions, and teams are not making final decisions on what their players are going to be here in January. We got a long way to go. We got a lot of things to see, a lot of players to add to rosters, leave rosters, it's a whole thing. So we don't have to know these answers right now, but I do think right now, I actually think from a dynasty perspective, he's not somebody I would say like go out and buy. He's not somebody I would sell either as a Egbuka. I think he's just like a guy, if I had him, I'd hold on to him. Because again, I'm not sure like what the ceiling is. And you mentioned some of the ambiguity of the situation there. So I do like the player. I still really like the player a lot. But it definitely just a bizarre ending to his rookie season. I do want to talk about Travis Hunter real quick, because the funny thing is, if you go back, if we listen to that clip, a lot of what I said was pretty much right until the end part where it was, I want to get higher in my rankings on this guy. Like, that's the part. It's like, no, probably shouldn't have said that. But he was viewed as an offense first player early on in his rookie season by the Jacksonville Jaguars. They played him a ton. That preseason usage actually was pretty telling. The thing is, it just didn't really happen for him from a fantasy standpoint. I think what I regret there, Boone, is probably thinking about how, and this is why the Travis Hunter injury is so annoying, because of the timing that it came in, because he was a guy that was going to take, and I wish I had emphasized this more in draft season, that he was a guy that was going to take a little bit of time to get going, because he came from this really rudimentary college offense where he wasn't doing a lot of advanced NFL things. Also, he was moonlighting between cornerback and wide receiver, double dipping there. So it was going to be a slow ramp up for him always. And then even James Gladstone, when he was talking to the media today, said, yeah, right as we were planning on him being a featured piece on offense and a package player on defense, I'm paraphrasing there a little bit, he ended up getting hurt, and we had to adjust from there. And then after that, they traded for Jacoby Myers, had this big breakout from Parker Washington, and they still expect him to play on both sides of the ball. But right now, Boone, they said in this press conference today, with the way contracts are expiring, we have I'm paraphrasing, but we have bigger needs at corner than we do at wide receiver. So they expect him to obviously play a heavy role at cornerback next season. So I'm not really sure what to do with Travis Hunter, right now at all, but this is another one we have to watch where the offense plays out in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely lost value. And like I said earlier, this is another one where I feel like I was with you on this. I feel like I was drafting Hunter a lot of places. I was recommending Hunter. And the ceiling is still there. Like, make no mistake, right? Like, this guy can still be an outstanding player in an offense that took huge leaps this year. Trevor Lawrence taking huge leaps this year. I think generally very excited about that passing attack. And yet, like you mentioned, like, you can go through it, right? Like, it's not just Jacoby Myers showing up and them extending him being a part of what they want to do moving forward. Parker Washington coming on, Brian Thomas Jr. Maybe that's like the one piece that we'll keep an eye on this offseason, because before the deadline, there were rumors that he could potentially get traded. And it did kind of seem like maybe he was the one guy in that receiving core that didn't totally find his place and get comfortable in that Liam Cohen system. So maybe he gets moved in the offseason and that kind of clears more of a path for Hunter. But I agree that it's got to be concerning when you look at this depth chart for next year. If everyone is still there, I now go into next year thinking Hunter's probably going to play more corner than we saw this year. And that's a problem. That's a legitimate problem, where this season we did nail the fact that, yeah, he's going to be used more on offense. All the sort of little quotes that were trickling out kind of pointed towards that. Liam Cohen kind of suggested that was going to be the case before the season. And that's what we saw. So yeah, that's another one where I'm probably holding Hunter as well, because that ceiling is still there, but I feel very nervous about it. And I agree with the poll that we put up there earlier, that if I'm looking at this group, I probably feel most confident that Emeka Egbuka is going to return value next year versus these other two guys, because I think there's a lot of question marks around Hunter, especially for 2026.
Yeah, what I'll say about Hunter is that, again, the quote from Gladstone today was you can expect more of an emphasis on Hunter's work at cornerback, which, number one, doesn't mean he's only going to play corner, which I think is kind of what the internet ran with it there. And he mentioned, if you look at our current, expiring contracts where they do have some guys who are obviously going to hit free agency at cornerback and they do more so a wide receiver, but that's the roster here in January. We'll see what it looks like. And they obviously had a lot of success with Myers, who's going to turn 29 next year. Washington had a great year. BTJ, we'll see. The worst thing that you can do as an offense is just assume what happened last year is going to happen again this year. Look at the Atlanta Falcons. They're like, oh yeah, we were fine at wide receiver. Drake London, awesome. Darnell Mooney had a great year. We'll be fine. We don't need to add anybody. And that blew up in their faces. I think Jacksonville's smart. They'll still play him a lot at wide receiver. But from a fantasy standpoint, right now, if we go into it and he's mostly playing corner and he's just kind of package play wide receiver, that's obviously not somebody that you can remotely trust. So this will be something we will track throughout the course of the offseason. I don't want to say anything with certainty about it just yet, other than I agree with you that he does still have the talent to be that awesome wide receiver, but he actually has to play there and develop there, which is a key thing that is just probably not going to happen at this point.
I'm smiling because I'm wondering what this conversation would be like if he didn't have the 8-catch, 101-yard, 1 touchdown game in that last game before the injury, right? If that doesn't happen, this is an entirely different conversation. But he had that one big performance, and it did seem like they were going to ramp him up from that point on. That might be like the main thing we're hanging on to at the moment in terms of keeping his fantasy value anywhere near where it was last year, which it definitely has taken a drop.
I just think about the alternate universe if he never got hurt, like if he doesn't, what does that look like? It's definitely one of the biggest what if moments of this past season. Okay, let's get to another clip here and let's talk some second year wide receivers. We had some optimism they could make a leap. Didn't really happen. Let's take a listen. I do think the Marvin Harrison Jr. usage has to change. There's no question about that. I think it will. And I'm not talking like full scale turn him into CeeDee Lamb or something, although their RP metrics from their rookie seasons are actually kind of similar. They're not that dissimilar from a build perspective.
His route running will kind of be unlocked by being a slot guy. I mean, he's a really good route runner. That might open up there, We need some change in his alignment just to be a guy that's not 80-80 outside on the line of scrimmage players. Like the guys that I charted last year that did that, it's like Quentin Johnston, Nico Collins, badass, of course, George Pickens, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton. We don't want to use Marvin Harrison Jr. like that. I didn't say like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown. Like nobody uses their number one receiver like this anymore. So that does need to change.
We are in Vegas. This is where dreams come true, right? So bear with me. We're going to play out a scenario where my dream comes true, all right? The Buffalo Bills win the Super Bowl, but that's not that bold. They win the Super Bowl based on the breakouts of Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid this year. Two players that I think a lot of people have already maybe written off or given up on. They are still very, very young players, all right? We have two guys here that, I see you laughing over that already.
Colin just said roast him in my ear. Oh, good memories. Good memories.
Oh, that's too good.
First of all, Marvin Harrison Jr., flat out, didn't happen at all. Not even close. Huge whiff. It wasn't used that way. Obviously did not have a breakout season. I don't even know if we need to relitigate that one. But you just flat out is not what happened. We'll see what happens going forward. Keon Coleman, you mentioned Dalton Kincaid in there, so I think we kind of got to give you like 50-50 credit because Kincaid had a breakout season there, Boone.
I mean, I guess. When I hear that, I'm thinking like from the creator of J.J. McCarthy is going to have a breakout season comes Keon Coleman's going to take a big step forward and help the Bills win the Super Bowl.
It was a bold prediction show. It was a bold prediction show.
Yeah, it's true. They were both bold predictions and bold predictions that I missed on terribly. So maybe the lesson learned here next year is like follow the rankings, trust like the week in, week out accuracy. When you see me give a bold prediction, maybe don't listen. Maybe look the other way because I definitely got those two big time wrong. And I'm not like taking any pride in the Dalton Kincaid one. Like, yes, he started the season strong before he had the injury, was the tight end 5 in fantasy points per game, but the usage didn't really change. Like the efficiency did. He started to hit on some of those plays that I think I even talked about probably during that show from the clip was from. that last year it kind of seemed like the opportunities were there, and Josh Allen weirdly would like miss him wide open downfield on these big plays. This year we started to hit on a few more of those, started to score some touchdowns, and yet big time durability concerns about him moving forward, because this is another season where he got derailed by injury. Keon Coleman, this is the one where like I feel that, and I'm happy to take the L's, like I said, but this one I gotta point some of the blame to basically everybody around the Bills, his teammates, the coaches, the beat writers. They were all talking him up. Like there was that Deion Dawkins press conference where Deion Dawkins was like going out of his way to be like, Keon's just a completely different player this year. And, you know, he's going to shock everybody and everything. And it was like the complete opposite of that. And it wasn't even that he didn't improve on the flashes that we saw during that rookie season. It went even further, right? It went to the point where we kind of found out like, doesn't seem like he's doing the things behind the scenes that are going to help him improve and develop and get better. And that led to him eventually being a healthy scratch multiple times. So yeah, it's about as bad as it can be when you go from hoping that that guy can emerge as a meaningful piece in a passing attack that desperately needs a receiver. And I mean, he's going to get another opportunity here with the Bills so shorthanded in the playoffs, but yeah, Keon Coleman, it's looking more and more like his future in Buffalo is very cloudy, you know, if not maybe coming to an end after this season. And really him as like a starting player in the NFL, I think is big time in question now after the season that we just saw.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's like got a meme after him right now, you know, the Cam Newton viral TikTok have you seen that one where he's like, I love cookies, like that was the highlight of Keon Coleman's season outside of that fourth quarter in week 1. So that's definitely not great for Keon Coleman. Yeah. The only thing that'll be shocking about him is when he can show up to a meeting on time. Thanks for that, Deion Dawkins. But yeah, the lesson there is never listen to teammates when they hype up their own guys. I'll never forget when I did an interview with Stephon Diggs where I was, especially when it comes to like fantasy stuff, I was like talking to him about Gabe Davis. He's like, yeah, you should get Gabe Davis in fantasy. Absolutely. He goes, I don't know how the draft works, but you should get Gabe Davis in fantasy. I'm like, well, I think we're going to go ahead and like take that off the recommendation. I don't know about the draft, but you should get him in. Okay. Well, we probably don't need to worry about that. And yeah, that's another thing to me. This is one thing that's always on my radar. These contested catch guys, which Coleman obviously has the ability to make outrageous catches. They always end up getting overrated in training camp. In mini camp, it's like the twitchy little small route runners, which by the way, hand up, I end up falling for those guys quite often. I got some Josh Downs takes that I want back, not because he's a mini camp star, but you know, like those little twitchy small route runners always get overhyped in OTAs and mini camp paddles practice. Then when the pads come on, it's like, oh, the contested catch guy, he's always getting way overhyped in training camp. So that's something to remember for all of us when we get to August. Something we all need to remember is some of the players I have a tough time letting go of. Here's one where I just can't help myself with this particular player. Let's take a listen. Listen, Bateman had what, between 700 and 800 yards last year? If I'm looking at like non-rookie wide receivers that go in the hundreds, I think he's one of my favorite bets to get to like over 900 this year. There's just more room for Rashod Bateman to grow. The Ravens are projected to be like a top 2 offense by every source. And yet their number 2 wide receiver goes deep in the hundreds in fantasy football drafts. And he is a good player. 64 wide receivers had 40-plus catches last year for Oz. Rashod Bateman had the highest percentage of those catches go for a first down or a touchdown. Super explosive, over 40% explosive play rate. Over 900 yards. Rashod Bateman had 224 yards. That ranked, speaking of deep in the hundreds, 110th at the wide receiver position this past season. He was behind such luminaries as De'Ami Brown, Jalen Lane, Isaac Tesla. Speaking of another player I was way too high on when they came in the league, Jahan Dotson had more receiving yards than Rashod Bateman, who had 19 catches on the entire season. Boone, I think, listen, late round pick, whatever. You light that one on fire. It's fine. My lesson of this one is like these guys that, you know, were prospects I liked who had disappointed. And Bateman did have a good year last year, and in 2024 he did have a nice season. Yeah. But that was mostly because the offense was so good, and obviously the offense wasn't that good this season. You know, Lamar Jackson obviously injured, the whole deal. We know how that went. My lesson on this is that these guys that, you know, people already know I like, I don't got to talk about them in fantasy, because you know what? If they end up having good years, people will be like, oh yeah, Harmon, he likes Rashod Bateman.
Your name's already
You don't got to
attached.
talk about it. Yeah, name's already attached. No need to double down from the fantasy standpoint. That will happen naturally. So I'm just not going to talk about these guys anymore. I'm going to try.
I mean, we also got it wrong that this Ravens offense was going to be, what did you say in the clip? A top 2 offense there? We all thought that was going to be the case. That was not the case. And that was a big reason why I'm pretty sure Bateman had 9 touchdowns the year before, right? That's kind of what was boosting his stock that year. But the whole offense struggled. So you look at basically the numbers top to bottom, and not many guys were putting up ceiling outcomes. And Bateman happened to put up what basically amounts to a floor outcome in that one. And I think now we can look at him as like probably still a good real life contributor. Like, I think you're right about all those takes on him. Just fantasy wise, I don't know that it's going to happen for him here, right? He's just a real depth piece. You're going to need a bunch of injuries to clear a path for him now. So yeah, it's an unfortunate one where that whole like ecosystem around him just completely fell apart, and none of those like little pieces on the Ravens were having, the big moments that they were having the year before. It happens.
And I will say from a real life perspective too, like I think I appreciate what Bateman does. He's a really, really good route runner, but like that's about it. He's a really, really good route runner. And for the most part, like I think they kind of need to do better at that second wide receiver position. So I will not be talking fantasy Rashod Bateman hype in the year 2026.